Okay. So I'm just curious, before we start, how many of you in here are solo practitioners? It's just you on your venture. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, okay. So we have, how many of you have 2 people on the team here? Whether they're here or not. Anyone with 3? Jeez, whoa, we've got some beat here. Anyone with 4? Okay. So since we're in an academic environment, and one of the key things that happens in an academic environment is what? Quizzes. So we're going to start off with a quiz. This won't be that hard a quiz either. So most important factor in your venture success. How many people would say it's your idea? I mean, after all, that's what you're selling, right? Don't see hands? Who would say it's your idea? Oh, we got one in the back. Good. How about your plan? Plan for execute. Ladies, did I see a hand semi-rise? Okay, we got a semi-rise there. Who else has a thought? Okay. Your funding resources, that's your lifeblood. If you ain't got that, the lights don't stay on. Anyone voting for that? No, looks like they're harboring their votes here. Your passion, work ethic, character. Oh, yeah, got a lot there. That's really important. Who says none of the above? You sure you didn't cheat? You cheated? Okay. None of the above is the correct answer, but what's the real answer here? What's the most important factor in your venture success? All of the above, but there's one other thing. Your team. Why do you think your team would be the most important factor?
Because they do all the above.
They do all of the above. Here's my question. You guys have an idea, and you have a plan for executing your idea, right? Great. That's like those of you who are athletes. You know, here's our plan for winning. But at the end of the day, plans don't win. Ideas don't win. When you're out on the field, what wins? Execution, and who executes? Excellent. No further questions. $5 in your envelope. So, is there anybody here? Anybody here who would doubt this? And feel free to disagree. This is about dialogue. The best teams are going to give you the best chance of winning. Doesn't guarantee anything. You could put together the best team in the world, have the best plan in the world, and if some macroeconomic cataclysm comes along, it doesn't matter. So your job as leaders, and that's what all of you are in this room, you're all leading a venture, one way or the other, is to build a great team. And a lot of us would argue that's the most important thing you do as a leader. You set the example, you do all that other stuff. But at the end of the day, your idea is not going to win, your plan's not going to win. You can be the most passionate, driven, great leader in the world. If you got a crummy team, it doesn't matter how good you are. Agree or disagree? Agree? A little or a lot? Okay. I would agree too. How many people in here have hired someone? Ever? Okay, that's a lot of people. How many people here have ever made a hiring mistake? And you can put 2 hands up if you've made a lot of them. Building a team is an art. It's not a science. It'd be great if it was a science. If it was like math, you've heard. Our mission in here today is not to guarantee that you'll put together a successful team, but to improve your odds of success, looked at a different way, improve your odds of making fewer mistakes. Because the thing about making mistakes in building a team is they're really, really, really potentially painful on a lot of levels. Why do you think making mistakes in building your team is going to be painful? To it.
It's always painful.
What's painful about it?
Making the wrong decision.
Because?
Slowing down progress.
Slows down progress, exactly. What other reason?
Waste money.
Waste money?
You might feel like you're taking a backward step.
Absolutely. Carl, are you slowing down progress?
It's hard to fire people.
And I bet that's the voice of experience. Those of us who have had to do that, and I will promise you, there are people in this room who will end up doing that this year, whether it's formal firing or whether it's breaking up with a partner. Why do you think that's hard and painful?
It's personal.
Yeah, right, it's personal. And we're going to talk a little bit about working with friends and family, which many of us have done. Then it gets really personal. So, you're getting ready to build your team. We have a little saying, lay the foundation before you start construction. Those of us who have violated that rule, bring together a bunch of folks, we're going to do a business, and then we start thinking about, oh geez, well, what are we doing? And all five of us actually have the same skills. That's going to make for an interesting team. So the most important thing as you start this, and you guys are in the process now of doing this, is what's our plan? And this doesn't have to be fancy or sophisticated or formal. What's your business? What's your venture? It's a nonprofit. What skill sets do you need? You know, if I'm starting a hydroponic farm, I might want someone who knows something about farming, maybe someone who knows something about construction, maybe somebody who knows something about finance. And who's going to be responsible for doing what? So let's just stop for a minute here. Who here has a three-person team? Okay. Are you guys together on the same team?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. What's your name?
Clark.
Clark? Clark? Can you come up for a second? It's a little hand for Clark, ladies and gentlemen. Come on. If you could just talk for a second, 30 seconds, what's your venture? What do you need? What skill sets? Plumbing, electricity, carpentry, etc. And who's doing what?
Absolutely. So we're a very entry-level venture right now. We're in our first couple weeks together. And our venture is tentatively dubbed Connect Lacrosse. The idea is to connect lacrosse players in New York City who lack any sort of really high-level coaching in the New York City area with a lot of former Division I and current professional lacrosse players who happen to be working in New York City by the thousands. So it's an untapped resource that we're trying to tap into. So we have a three-person team. We've been working together for a couple weeks. We all played on the Colgate lacrosse team together last year. Austin, one of my partners, is the manager this year. Our friend Tim, who's not here today, is not on the team anymore, and then I'm still on the team. And together we come from three different areas. I come from Connecticut, and I have a lot of connections throughout New England. Our friend Tim is from New York City. He has a lot of connections with the athletic directors and people in New York City. And then Austin is from Lexington, Kentucky. So it's a little bit of an outlier, but has a resource in the another untapped area of the lacrosse market. So
What skill sets are you going to need for your venture to work?
Yeah, so skill sets, we need to be outgoing. A lot of it actually is just having connections, getting to know people. Playing Division I lacrosse helps you get to know a lot of other Division I lacrosse players throughout high school and throughout the actual college process. You make a lot of connections which you can tap into later, which is what we're currently doing right now to find coaches, to make connections with coaches that we know personally and can rely on. And then you need to be able to follow up with these coaches and set up all the lessons, make sure everything's going to plan.
And then another thing that we need that we don't have yet is we need to build a website, like kind of a dual-sided website where we can input things and coaches can input things, and people can come and see that and then make plans through that. And none of us can build that sort of website, so that's a skill set that's required that we don't yet have.
Cool. And what your name is?
Austin.
Austin. What Austin did there was really important. It's important to know what you don't have, because very few of us are Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo or have, all the skill sets needed to do everything. I'm curious, is there going to be any money involved in any of this?
The website will take money to build, and obviously the lessons will cost money. Like you can't.
Okay. So is it safe to say, at some point, and I realize you guys are really early, you're going to need someone somewhere to kind of keep track of the money coming in, the money coming out, etc. Who's doing that on your team?
I'm going to take charge of that.
Okay, I like that. Take charge. So thank you very much, Hans Clark there. So, and let me ask one other question. There's 3 people still on your team?
Yep.
Who's the leader of the team?
Tim Truesdale, the one who's not here, started the venture, and then brought Austin on, and then they brought me on.
Okay, cool. And by the way, that's something we're going to talk about in a minute. That was great. You guys are all athletes?
Former and current. Yeah.
Okay, so sometimes in the world of athletes, it's a little more comfortable coming up with who the leader is, because they're used to a team captain or a coach. How many of you have not yet determined who is kind of the leader of the venture? And that's fine to put your hand up, because a lot of times it doesn't surface that early. Everyone has determined who's the leaders? Awesome, you guys are rocking already. Okay. One thing to keep your eye on, ventures often start as a gathering of pals, but that's not really a team. So you start creating an actual team when you're staffing it based on your needs. We got someone to cover IT, somebody to cover finance, marketing, sales, whatever it is you're going to need. So, the mission today is to have you leave with at least 1 or 2 things that you can do better when it comes to building your team. At the end of the conversation here, I'm going to ask, what are those 1 or 2 things that you're actually thinking you can use and do? Maybe there's nothing, and then I'll learn I need to redo the presentation, and that'll be fair. Okay, very first thing. How many of you in this room have actually put down your respective roles and made a job description of who's doing what? Can I see hands on that? Okay, that's not a lot. And by the way, that's not surprising. There's some people in this room who were in business for a long time before they ever did that at their companies. Yeah, I think my hand is up. Why would you create a written job description? Why do you think that would be useful, even though it may feel kind of corporate and formal?
Makes it so that different things don't fall through the cracks, so people aren't saying, this is my job, this is my job. It's actually clear what role you have in the organization.
What Blaze just said there, I would give that answer probably an A+. That's exactly one reason to do it. Actually, there's probably a little bit more. So nothing falls through the cracks. The corollary of that, or the flip side of that, is so everybody knows who's doing what. For those of us who have launched ventures without doing that, here's what can happen. And I speak from the voice of experience. Started a company years ago, the Zine Company, with one of my best pals. He and I loved each other. We're going to start a venture. We're both great sales guys. Blah, 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 blah. And then about 4 or 5 months into it, we realized that no one was actually taking care of the finances. Because I sort of assumed he was, and he sort of assumed I was. And so we both assumed and nothing got done. So this is really, really super important. The other thing is, you guys, how many people in here expect sometime this year to try and find a partner or an employee or hire a contractor or somebody to do something? Can I see hands on that? Okay, that's most of you. So when you're doing that, you're actually going hunting. Okay? you're hunting for a particular kind of person. So your chance of actually getting what you're after, getting what you're hunting for, is going to be about 1,000% better if you can describe it. Because here's what's going to happen. Someone wants to build a website. You just said you guys need to build a website. So there's people in here who might know somebody who could do that. But I'm guessing you don't want to just build a website. You may want, is this an e-commerce platform?
Yeah.
Okay, so all of a sudden we have, I'm looking for someone who can do this, who knows this. You know, maybe it's, do you want someone full-time or is this a project? Okay, so we put that in there. Then, that's great. Do you know who that person is right now, yes or no?
We exchanged emails with somebody, but we don't know.
Okay. So chances are you may want to look at more than one candidate. So you might want to take this thing and use it and say, hey, pass it to 3 or 4 people. Here's who I'm looking for if you know anybody. So putting it in writing is so friggin' important. Stuff doesn't slip through the cracks. Everyone knows who's doing what. You can use this to go try and find the person. And the other thing this does is when something doesn't get done, you have some accountability. When the bills aren't getting paid, and we look and we say, oh, wait a minute, you were the head of finance, and finance is supposed to be in charge of this. So this is really, really important to do. So here's my request to you guys. And this doesn't have to be complicated or overthought. You can do this in 5 bullets. When we meet here, Wills, when do we meet here again?
This November 5th or 6th.
Okay. Can I see a show of hands of how many people will have actually written down the descriptions of the various roles at their company? Okay. Who is not going to write down that? Okay, well, everyone qualifies to stay for lunch. So, we're looking to hire somebody. Who? Go for it.
Can I ask you? So the roles in our company are kind of like ever changing. For example, Rex wrote a job description for me. It was way back in March. I'm trying to delegate into to me. That's certainly changed over the past 8 months.
Sure.
So I guess I don't know how you do it better. Like, do you want people to continually adjust their descriptions? Or?
Absolutely, because what you guys are starting off here on your careers as entrepreneurs, and what you may discover as you step onto the field is that you have skills that you didn't know you had. There may be areas where you have natural strength. I didn't realize I was a sales guy. I never had the opportunity to sell, and I love it. And that's now part of what I'm going to do. So these things are kind of living, breathing documents to some extent. And if you find you've got some muscles and you're doing stuff that you're enjoying, you're good at, fold it in there. And sometimes what happens is there are responsibilities that don't fall into any job description, but someone has to do. What happens to those guys? They get assigned over here.
Yeah, we don't want to.
Okay. But that's a good question, and they will evolve. Interviews. How many of you have interviewed somebody for a position? Cool. How did it go? Yeah, who did you interview?
I had to interview somebody to replace me at the company I work for. So I interviewed I did a phone interview and
How many of you have interviewed somebody for your venture, to bring on a partner or to do something for your venture? Okay?
Well, it was less formal. A couple of interviews I had. I was just seeing a couple of my friends whether they would be able to handle the workload involved with TIA, or whether they would have certain skills that I or my other teammates do not already bring to the table. So far, we have not found any, but we're still looking.
Okay, so I'm gonna push you guys, Joey, I know you've interviewed a few people in your,
Yes.
so you can perhaps help me as I get to this next one. When I say do a real interview, I don't know what that's opposed to a fake interview, but here's what I'm talking about here.
It's when you offer them water or coffee before you sit down. That's a real interview.
It's a real interview, okay. That's the voice of experience. But think about what do you think an interview is really about?
Meeting someone.
What's that?
Meeting someone?
Yeah, it's meeting somebody, but you're doing a lot more than meeting. You can meet people and, you know, it's licensed. What are you really doing in an interview?
It's to see if, one, the person's the right fit for the company, and two, if the person believes they're the right fit for the company.
Okay, when you say the right fit for the company, what's that mean?
It's to hash out the details and for a person to understand if they actually want to work there and they get down to the nitty gritty and they understand what the foundations of the company are. And then it's for the interviewer to understand if the person is the right fit for them.
Okay, I'm not sure, right fit for me feels sort of soft, but what, if you're interviewing me for a role, I'm going to build your website, what do you mean by if I'm the right fit?
If you can do what I'm going to ask of you, and if that's my side, and then another part of my side is, do you want to do what I'm asking of you?
Okay, and that's part of your job is to assess that. So this is what I'm going to call a real interview. Because an interview is fundamentally intelligence gathering. That's your mission. You want to walk in there and figure out, is this somebody who I want to marry? And marry is overstating it, but when you hire somebody, ideally it's for a real long time, and that's your mission, to make sure it's going to fit for a while, particularly if it's not just a project. So when we say enter with a plan, most of us do interviews initially really, really casually. We kind of, sit down, rap a little bit, hey, what's going on? Here's what we're thinking of doing. How's that sound? That's great. That's really how most of us start, and it's really not the best way to do it for a lot of reasons. Because many of you, hopefully, are going to have more than one candidate to interview. Hopefully, you're not going to have to choose from only one person. So if you're doing multiple interviews, you want to enter with a plan, and the plan is really simple. What are the 5 things or 3 things that this person needs to have? If I'm hiring a programmer, do they need to know Ruby on Rails? Do they need to know Django? Do they need to be able to do a front end? Can they work 5 days a week? Okay, be super clear before you walk in and sit down with them what it is. And this is not to get overly formal, guys. This is just to increase your chances that you're actually going to get the best person available. Remember back to the very first slide, best team, best chance to succeed? So if you sit there in front of you, you say, okay, look, they have to have these 5 skill sets, period. Maybe you'll have other stuff on there about values, how do you treat people, or you can put in whatever you want in there, whatever you think is important, but make sure you have it, because if you interview more than one person, you'll be able to actually compare. Why would you want to have multiple interviewers? Why do you think that would be important?
Your questions evolve as you go along.
Mm-hmm.
So I did interviews for consulting when I had a consulting internship, and the questions we started out asking for the first few medical professionals I was talking to were totally different than the questions I asked for people towards the end of the study.
Okay. Why else might you want to have different people interview a candidate?
People have different conceptions of the role, and they might be looking for, you want to be on the same page about the responsibilities of the role, but they might be able to interpret an individual's competencies differently.
Different people see different things. Greg, did you have a point?
I was just going to say, if you're going to add this person to your team, you might as well have everyone on your team interviewed, I think it's good to get a second opinion and not just to come on someone.
Sure. Perry?
You didn't make it clear whether you were interviewing individually or together. So sometimes having two interviewers in the room at once, one person can observe better while the other's having the conversation. And you pick up a lot just by observing people.
Sure. But fundamentally, whether you do 2-on-1 or 1-on-1, 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 the most important reason to have multiple people interview, aside from making sure that everyone on the team likes him or her, or thinks they have the stuff, is if an interview is about gathering intelligence, if you look at the world through different sets of lenses, you will see more. There's no question about it. I'm guessing there are a lot of mentors in here who have made hiring mistakes, including me. My biggest ones were when it was just me doing the interview, or I had 3 other guys like me doing the interview. That middle-aged white marketing executives doing the interview, and a huge surprise. We all saw the same thing. And then 6 weeks later, when we fired the guy, and every woman in the company came up and said, that guy was a creep. I'm going, geez, nobody said anything to me about that. And one of them finally said, who did you have interviewing? You had a bunch of people like you. Didn't have anyone else from different functions, different sex, different whatever. Different people see different things. So this is, if you think about this being super important, picking that teammate, get as much intelligence as you can. And the final thing here, oh good, we got the real world intervened.
So I'm reading a book called Privilege right now, which I would recommend to all the students. It's about how the top investment banking, commercial banking, and consulting firms select the people who are going to work for them, coming out of undergrad and coming out of graduate school. And it talks a lot about the personal bias, right? Andy's a white middle-class, middle-aged guy, and he's got a personal bias more often than that to him. Right? He wants to be around people like him. And so one of the things I would say to you guys is having people around you like is important, but having people who can actually accomplish the task at hand is much more important. So the accounting guy might go to, not to disparage St. John's, he might go to an accounting school, right? They didn't go to Colgate. They went to an accounting school, and they grew up in Queens, and they live with their mom, and you say, gee, I'd never want to hang out with that guy or that gal on a Friday night, but they might be the best darn accountant you could find. So it's not always about, gee, I really like Bob, or I really like Mary Ann. It's who can accomplish, so going in with the plan is not always just, let's go find the best, the best all-around athlete. It's who can accomplish that. And that comes with different personalities and different backgrounds, and it looks and smells different sometimes. And that's not only okay, but it can be a very positive thing. And I really don't think you can stress that enough, because having diversity and having people understand their roles and being really good at their roles is oftentimes more important than having the best available athlete at the time.
Excellent. I mean, when we hire in our image, we end up with if I'm the quarterback, I end up with a team of 11 quarterbacks. And by the way, that team doesn't do very well. To Brian's point, that goes back to a team is not a gathering of buddies. Team is what you build according to the plan, which includes your needs. Joe?
Yeah, just as kind of a caveat to that, because I think that's really important. One of the most important things is skills and finding someone who's extremely talented. But also when you're hiring for a young startup, something that I think is overlooked a lot until you get to maybe like 5 or 6 people is culture. And that's an incredibly important aspect of your business, is what kind of culture, because your business is kind of a little society in many ways. And you have to realize that when you're hiring somebody, you're not just hiring somebody who has skills and is going to do a job, you're hiring a human being who you're going to be hanging out with for 60 to 80 hours every single week. And so, I always hire the best people, but you also have to hire someone who you can get along with. And that doesn't mean you have to hire someone in your image. If you can only get along with people who are exactly like you, you know, you need to do some soul searching, I think. But you know, you need to hire somebody who you can have beers with, who you can, you know, have fun with. Because you are going to be spending so much time with them. And if you don't like that person at a personal level, you're going to get annoyed with that person, and things are going to get bad.
Two thoughts. One is culture is important for all companies.
Yes.
The second thing is Joey is voicing the famous dictum, don't hire jerks regardless of how talented they are.
That's
Any other?
I think that was it.
I was going to say I don't necessarily agree with all that. I think that it's often, and when an early stage startup, it's important that you get along with everyone, but I don't think you need to be best friends with everyone. I think a lot of culture is very important. A lot of startups sometimes, in a very idealistic way, spend too much time trying to find a cool place to hang out. Like we're all best buds, and that's great, and that does happen, but I think it shouldn't be the primary focus when you're starting out so early. But
Well, the mission is you want to win.
Yeah.
And you get the best people who do the things you need to do. At the end of the day, you don't want jerks, but
there could be someone who has a great skill and just weird, and you don't get along with them, but they're not
Yeah.
jerks, but you're not going to be yours.
yeah, and particularly as the company gets a little bigger,
Yeah.
you're going to have people in there who may not want to hang. The final thought is this. This is hard. Listen more, talk less in an interview. We once did a giant project for big consulting firm that was having all sorts of trouble hiring or having the people they hire stick. So we did a little, a big study with them, and we watched, 500 of their interviews when they were interviewing people. And it was fascinating. 75% of the airtime was the interviewer. And ironically, there was a direct correlation between how much the interviewer spoke and how well they thought the interview went. So, and why was this company not being successful? Well, if interviewing is intelligence gathering, the organs we have above our shoulders that gather intelligence don't include the mouth. They include the eyes and the ears. So just a thought. You guys are all facile with your tongue. You're able to talk. Working in an interview, you can win. But when you go in, have the discipline, if you can, even if you write it down in front of you. Listen more, talk less. LMTL, whatever it is that's going to get you to sit there and learn. And you only learn when your mouth is shut and your eyes and your ears are open. Cool? Questions? Okay, this may seem clunky, but I will guarantee you none of you are going to get a job at some point without providing references. And you may say, wait a minute, I'm talking about my buds. How many people here have gone for internships? And I don't know, do they ask for references? Some yes, some no. Okay. The bottom line is, if you needed to get, what is a reference here? What does it really do for you? It gives you what? If a reference on a candidate.
Personal validation.
Validation, but what is it really giving you? If you're going to interview, you're looking at a candidate and she brings you some references. Those references give you what?
Confidence.
Yeah, some confidence because now you have a little bit more intelligence about this person. So references are just one more source of data. It could be professors, it could be buddy, whatever. But try if you can on whoever you're hiring. Who here has hired developers?
I was going to say ask for bad references too. So like when we hired Shop, I'd say, I know you're going to give me 2 people that love you. Give me someone who doesn't. And then that's helpful too.
Yeah, particularly if they say, well, everybody loves us.
Yeah, but then I say that's not true.
That's not true. It can't be true.
So my tip on references, I use the references and then ask them for a reference. When you go 2 degrees of separation, you get a more honest answer.
I'd assume that most people are not going to give you references that are going to say terrible things about you. So, but this is one more piece of data.
So Andy, on that, if many companies have a policy not to give bad references, and so you have to really listen in those cases, because if they're not giving a good reference, a real positive one, that might be their way of giving them a poor reference.
Brian makes a great point, because no one wants to get sued, and regrettably, we live in a society where you can sue somebody for no reason, any reason, whatever. And when you're getting a reference, listen for what's between the lines. Because there will be something there.
I use LinkedIn and all kinds of contacts to go behind what I call the reference wall. Because I hire a lot of creative people who put together fabulous portfolios because they're creative people. So whether they actually created these portfolios, whatever. So it really requires several layers of investigation. And, so references, I don't trust them. People's jobs are to get good references. I would expect nothing but good references that really dig around on social.
Because again, this is intelligence gathering. Remember we said there's no more important decision you're going to make than hiring your team, bringing your team aboard. The more you can learn about whoever you're interviewing, the better job you're going to do. Most of us as entrepreneurs will run into situations where there's a gun to our head. We have to do something fast. We're dying, we're choking, we've got too much work. And desperation can result in us saying things like, I think he may be okay. Maybe he doesn't have all the things we need, but whatever. Or maybe she seems a little bit, but if you find yourself talking yourself into somebody, stop, because the chances are really, really strong. That's not going to be successful. How many people in here have been guilty of this, have done this? Okay. How does it work out?
It was horrible.
Hard. Yeah, I'm seeing thumbs down on that. Yeah, it's, I used the marriage analogy before. I mean, it's a mini marriage when you're bringing somebody into your company. Would you ever marry somebody if they said, tell me about him? And out of your mouth came stuff like, yeah, he's pretty good. He's got a lot of what I'm looking for. Your friends would be going, that's who you're marrying? So don't lower the bar. You will be absolutely tempted, I promise you. Where's Joey or Uni? I don't know if they're here, but I still remember them having the gun to their head to develop, that they need to bring a developer on, and there were like the 12 signals of don't do this, but the desperation meter was going off the charts, and they did it and regretted it, and they're not here to tell us now. The corollary of this, if building your team is the most important factor in your success, who you put on the field, keep the bar super high. Some of you talked about making sure have people who fit your plan, have muscles you don't have, but most important, and this is really hard for a lot of entrepreneurs to do, really hard, getting people, because all of us come complete with egos, and sometimes those egos are big enough so we don't want people who challenge us. But the people who challenge us, who might disagree and look at us and say, you know what, I think you're 100% wrong. Those are exactly the people you want on your team. You want people, ideally, if you could wave your wand, who are smarter than you, better than you, have muscles you don't have, who are going to challenge you. Because those are the people who are going to enable you to stand on their shoulders and build something bigger and better than you could do by yourself.
Andy, what do you think about consult to hire type setups?
Consult to hire?
Yeah.
Well, I love try before you buy. Do you guys know what Ryan's talking about? Consult to hire. It's kind of like try before you buy.
Yeah.
I like that because you get a chance to kind of test drive. I don't know if any of the mentors here have a thought about that. consult before you buy?
I've just taken on a new position on that basis.
You like it or you like
Well,
it?
I'm starting Monday, but it's month to month and it works for them and it works for me. It's like, I've
Lower
got
risk
confidence, I
role.
can sell myself and do the job and they get to figure it out.
I'm doing the same thing, and I think it's a question of, do we fit, is there magic, is this gonna work, and then we both evaluate each other, and it's a really good way, because making that commitment sometimes at a different level is tough to break.
Please?
It's something I've never done, but like, think a lot about. It's unfortunately in many instances, like, I haven't really had the option for that because somebody's like, well, this person's gonna hire me or whatever, and you really wanna make sure that you're getting the right person in the door. But if it's on the table, I think it's awesome. I think it's hard for it to be on the table.
Yeah, I don't love it so much. The person, if the person doing the consulting is financially secure, great. But if they're not, it's a very tenuous spot for them. And I want my folks to be thinking about work, not whether they're getting a paycheck.
Andy, how would you apply it to a TIA venture, rent to buy?
Next question. No, Ryan raised the question, I should ask him. Can you apply it to a TIA venture?
I think a lot of times I hear people say, particularly for the development that you guys were talking about, I have a buddy who's in computer science and he could totally build this thing for me, and I don't want to put together the $2 or $3 grand that it'll cost to build it, so let's work with him. And then sometimes you can see, oh yeah, now he's on the team. So it could be a good way to test out even friends of friends before just make them part of your guys' group.
There's a lot of I've had where like, in the hiring process you'll give someone like a project. So instead of actually bringing them on like as a real consultant, just say, hey, take this project as like proof before you hire them. So you can say do this little development project and then use that as like a barometer.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's really important at the outset when you're launching your businesses to sort of de-risk them in as many ways as you can. And so you want to bootstrap. And so if there are things that you can outsource and get quality product and not have to commit, long-term to an expense, then I think that makes sense. But, I think the problem with the consult versus, committing to someone, it's a function of the level of, in my mind, in my experience, of the kind of person that you're going for. But, sometimes when you don't make, a reciprocal commitment, you don't get, what you want in return. And that's particularly true at the executive level. I think at the stage that you guys are at, I think it makes a lot of sense to rent versus buy.
I mean, the more senior you get, the more difficult that strategy would be.
I just want to make a nuts and bolts comment, because I agree with that, but if you use somebody who's not employed by you, you don't own their work product. And so documentation on that is really important.
And one other quick thought. Many of us in this room are familiar with what happens when early on in a venture, when all of a sudden one person is doing 80% of the work and the other person's doing 20, and we kind of agreed we're partners, or we brought in a third person. That stuff can be really delicate and challenging. When you bring someone new in, probably the first order of business should not immediately be, let's carve up the equity, if you have it. The first order of business might better be, let's see how we work together, particularly at this stage where there's not money changing hands necessarily. Cool? Okay. Friends and family. I asked mentors, how many of you have worked with friends and family before? Okay, that's just about almost everybody. Were there ever any issues?
Yeah, my experience in working with friends and family is that it's the toughest money that you should ever think about raising. And I've raised a lot of money both institutionally and from friends and family. And if I ever lose sleep at night, it's almost always
over the friends and family money. So, think long and hard about what you're doing and who you're asking to invest in your businesses when it's friends and family, because it's the kind of money that sometimes people can't afford to lose. They may read, an offering memorandum that discloses every risk and that it's illiquid and all that other stuff, but losing $25,000 of, your best friend's mother may be a lot worse than losing, $100 million from an institution that's in the business of making investments and losing money and making money.
And then moving from taking best friend's money or family money, which is delicate and often the closest source of money, by the way, to actually working with these folks. Who's worked with a brother, a sister, a friend? How'd it go? Yeah.
It was kind of a roller coaster, right? I mean, we both were accountable for different aspects of what we were working on. And when somebody didn't do one thing, then you get yelled at by the boss, or just start talking. So it's genuinely interesting to see where it goes once you get home after that.
Yeah, because by the way, you can fire your brother, but then there's Thanksgiving dinner together. And trust me, that can be a delicate dinner. I had hired two of my brothers. I had a tennis court lighting business when I was after sophomore year in Colgate. And I was paying my brothers $10 an hour. This is 1972 to dig dishes for $10 an hour. That's great money. I don't know who can quickly do the math to say what that would be in 2015 dollars, but a lot. And one day they don't show up on the job. So I end up having to dig the ditches. I ask them, where were you guys? You said you were going to be here. Grandpa got his tickets for the Yankee game. I said, yeah, but I tried to fire them. And then the next family dinner at home didn't go so well. So they were rehired, but it wasn't pretty. The challenge is these things are super easy to get into. How many of you are working right now with a friend or a roommate? Okay. Which is great. That's how these ventures often start. Super easy to get into. And Noel said something before about, but you have a relationship with these people. So all of a sudden, when you're working with friends or family, you got two things going on that don't normally exist. You've got, you're my buddy, and you're my colleague, or maybe I'm your boss, which can be awkward. So this is not to say don't do it, because chances are you're going to do it, and some of us continue to do it the rest of our lives. Some of us don't ever learn. But do it with your eyes open. Here's some thoughts to make it a little bit easier. When you start, and this may sound clunky and formal, and you're just two buds having a beer, and let's build an app. Great! But if you want to make sure you minimize the chance for pain, and minimize the chance for a great friendship ending up on the cutting room floor, right out of the gate, just kind of detail who's responsible for what. Makes it way, way, way easier when stuff doesn't get done. Or when there's a task that's sort of sitting out here and you're like, who was supposed to do that? How many of you, again, have done this right now? Have clearly written out who's responsible for what? Okay, that's not a lot, so I know when we're back here next month, you will do this. So then, here's the next awkward part. And some of you, I think, have already addressed this. When you're dealing with your friends, your peers, right? My friend's not telling me what to do. No difference between him and me. But in this role, one of you is likely going to be a leader. And this can be awful. But the one thing we do know is, in nature, two-headed creatures don't survive that long. So someone's going to have to lead. Anybody have any stories about working through this? Challenges, issues with figuring out who's actually driving, whether it was awkward, difficult, or just natural. Mentors included. Okay. Well, I'll tell you two quick stories. I remember one, we had what was the name of it? Real Abroad?
Yeah, Jack and Steve.
Yeah, we had a nice three-person team building a platform for students going abroad to find information about Budapest and London and whatever. And I remember sitting there, and they were pretty far into it. They were running into some challenges, and we said, just wondering, because there were things that weren't getting done, we said, who's the leader? And sort of one looked at the other, and the other looked at the other, and they all kind of looked down at their hands, and no one sort of wanted to actually say, who is, who do you think is, well, and they didn't have a leader. And part of the challenge is without a captain on the field, you're not exactly sure what to do. I had a business like that. I had a nice limousine business in New York. We had two leaders, and a lot of stuff didn't get done. Okay, so now we're to the point, guys, where you built your team, and you will continue to build it. But at the end of the day, nothing's been done, right? So we're looking at this great team that's about to go onto the field. So how does this team start actually doing something? I heard somebody use a D word here before. You actually start executing when you start what? Delegating. Delegating's what? What's delegating, real fast? Shout it out.
Assigning tasks.
Bingo. And by the way, delegating is when you start turning thought into action. And that's exactly what assigning something that you're not doing yourself, right? How many people here have delegated a task so far in their venture? Easy? Natural? Smooth? Any challenges? No challenges? Perfect. It's called paradise.
I mean, there's, I've had a problem with getting things done on time. And it's hard working with a friend because if something doesn't get done on time and then it gets done a little bit after when you want it done, like you can't get too mad, but at the same time, you kind of want things to get done on time when you say they should be done.
Anybody ever have that experience when delegating a task? Maybe it not being done on time or on budget, or Ryan?
Yeah, because once you cross that line, then it kind of opens the gates to not really having any deadlines. When we first started developing my last company, we'd have 2-week sprints in the development with the contract people that are taking the software. And if they were a day or two late, at first I thought, okay, it'll be done in a day or two. And then a day or two became like basically a collapse of the whole 2-week process that we'd set up. And so you have to be tight on those as well.
So you're going to have, as a leader, this is part of your job. This is how you leverage your talents. You start assigning tasks. And you know when to delegate is when. When either you can't do it all or you don't have the skills. So some people are natural. If you're a captain of a team, generally you're used to saying, you guard this guy, you guard her, etc. For a lot of us, delegating can be a little delicate, particularly when it's with friends and family. Most of us, and it's not just young entrepreneurs, there's a lot of folks in corporate America who say, you know what, by the time I'm done explaining to you, I can do it myself. Anyone ever find themselves saying that? Yeah, I see a lot of hands going up. Let me ask you, where does that road lead? If you find yourself saying this.
One, you end up doing it all yourself, and two, you don't have team players who can actually do it the next time.
Yeah, so you end up doing it yourself, and you don't have people who can do what you need to do, which is not a good place to be. Some of us think that we actually can do it better than the person we're assigning it to, which sometimes is true, but where does this lead? Kind of the same place. Okay, if I know how to do it best, I'll do it and you end up, and this one gets to what you were just talking about, Pat.
Yeah.
You know, saying to your friend, hey dude, you said Monday, what part of Monday was confusing? You're probably not saying that to your friend.
Yeah, maybe not that much.
Okay, so here's a couple of quick thoughts about how to attack that. And this doesn't matter whether it's someone you're hiring to build your website, whether it's someone on your team. Be super clear about who's doing what. And remember we talked about the importance of writing this down? Once it's down in paper, or on your computer, once it's in front of you, then there's not a lot of opportunity for, oh, I thought you meant X. Because generally, not too many people can be confused by the word Monday. Right? So if I say, hey, we got to do this soon. Well, my idea of soon might be tomorrow, and yours might be in a month. But if we all agree it's Monday, not a lot of chance of confusion. So put it down in writing. Again, this may sound clunky and corporate. I promise you it will save you pain and suffering, and maybe friendships. What is it that we're agreeing to do? You promised me. We've agreed you're going to get 100 posters printed up. We clear? Is it 100, 150? It's 100. And it's going to be done by November 1st. So once we have that, we're in way better shape. So, you're off delegating. You built your team. You're now delegating. You're assigning stuff. You're doing. Remember we said success as an entrepreneur is not an event. It's a process. You have 799 steps grinding it out. So you're now grinding those steps out. You're delegating, doing this, building the website, getting the posters, etc. So now you have your team operating on the field. And you're going to get to a point, and a lot of us hit this fairly early on, where you're going to have to assess the performance of your team. Because only in heaven does the team that you put together on day one generally finish the game. I'm curious, and maybe any of the mentors here have a situation where everyone they started off with is the team they finished with? Didn't have to fire anyone? Yeah, I've heard about you, Dean.
Fire everyone.
Yeah, fire everyone. Even after before breakfast. So assessing performance is really important. And you know what? The things we talked about before, putting in writing what the job description is, what the expectations are, maybe how you're going to measure someone. The beautiful thing when you do that is then when you assess performance, you actually have a yardstick to measure against. When you don't do that, it's like, Brian, listen, we got to talk. Things aren't going that well. And Brian's going, well, what's not going well? I'm going, well, it's just not good. I owe Brian saying, listen, man, we agreed you were going to do X by X and Z by Z, or whatever. And you didn't. That's not personal. I still like you. So when you do that, it will simplify your life by orders of magnitude. Much less pain, much more pleasure. And when someone's doing well as leader, do you know what you have to give them? You can, and when we say reward, this isn't just financial. This is recognition. This is a pat on the back. This is to say, hey, Brian, you're kicking butt. You're doing a great job. Giving you more equity. Not yet. Okay. And now to the painful part, and now is where reality sticks its nose into everything. Since you've already heard the mentors in this room say they probably have 1,070 firings under their belt. Actually, now I see Bob there, make that 2,070. If someone's not delivering, if someone's letting you down, just remember this, excuses don't win. And the most important thing when you start hearing that, the minute you see a pattern, our view is everyone gets a second chance, no one gets a third chance. Act fast. Because this is like a relationship that's going south. Most of us have been in that situation where we knew we should have ended it earlier, and we let it linger, and I guess more than linger, fester. Once you realize it's not working, end it fast. It's for your benefit, but equally important, it's for the person. Because chances are, if they're not delivering, they know it. One quick thought. Any questions so far? Two years ago, when I think we gave this, someone came up to me afterwards and said, Andy, you're talking about competition and teams and winning and military analogies and all that stuff. I just want to do my venture. It's not about, competition and winning and all that stuff. And I said, really? Okay. And this was a person who had a nice little nonprofit. I said, do you plan on getting donors? She said, yeah. I said, do your donors have an unlimited supply of money? No. So you are going to be competing for that donor's dollar. Okay. Are you planning on getting employees? Yeah. Are there unlimited numbers of great employees? No. Are those employees being offered other jobs? Yes. So you're competing to get the best employees. You're competing to get funding. Every one of you, whether you want to think about this or not, you are fighting out there to win. As we said at the start, the best team's going to give you the best chance of winning. So, final question. I said I'd ask you, is there anything from here you're going to leave and apply to your venture that you can look me in the eye and say, you know what, you've said a lot of stuff, I'm ready for lunch, but the one thing or two things I've gotten from here that I am actually going to do is what? So no one gets lunch until I get at least 7 answers. And they can even be, Andy, you didn't give me anything, you better redo it. Go for it.
Definitely going to have read job descriptions. Definitely not settle in terms of hiring someone just out of desperation.
Hire fast. Hire fast. Yeah, that's one that's easy to say and it's tough to do.
I think more concrete deadlines.
And when you say concrete,
So instead of being, let's say versus Monday.
okay, but there's one other thing you got to do. If you listen really carefully, you said Monday. I thought you said Tuesday.
No, I didn't.
How do I know that?
I wrote it down.
Bingo. Thank you. Who else has something that they're going to do or take away from this?
When you're interviewing, listen more to talk.
The divine ratio: 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth, 4 to 1.
Learning to delegate more.
And when you delegate, you're going to be super clear, put it down. Anything else?
Hire better than you. Not you personally, yeah.
Jeez, but I thought we were friends. No, but what, did you hear what Bob said? The best managers are the ones who hire people better than themselves. We used to say at the end of the year, when you take the team picture, and you're sitting up there and everyone's gathered around, are you kind of making excuses of, I know he's not that, whatever, or are you going, look at the stars that I gathered? Because that's your mission. Hire stars, and if you can't hire stars, hire people and make them stars. Just remember this. That is your job as a leader. I think that's, Wills, is that it?